The cellar was filled with runoff from the broad, and an egg-sized hole was cut out of the synagogue's back wall, through which one woman at a time could see only the ark and the feet of the dangling men, some of which, to add insult to insult, were caked with shit. It was through this hole that the women of the shtetl took turns viewing my great-great-great-great-grandmother. Many were convinced, perhaps, because of the new baby's perfectly adult features, that she was of an evil nature, a sign from the devil himself, but more likely their mixed feelings were inspired by the hole. From such a distance, palms pressed against the partition, and I and an absent egg, they couldn't satisfy any of their mothering instincts. The hole wasn't even large enough to show all of the baby at once, and they had to piece together mental collages of her from each of the fragmented views. The fingers connected to the palm, which was attached to the wrist, which was at the end of the arm, which fit into the shoulder socket. They learned to hate her unknowability, her untouchability, the collage of her. On the 7th day, the well-regarded rabbi paid 4 quarter chickens and a handful of blue cat eyes marbles for the following announcement to be printed in Shimon T's weekly newsletter: that without precise knowledge of the cause, a baby was delivered to the shtetl, and that it was quite beautiful, well-behaved, and not at all stinky, and that he was resolved, out of consideration for the baby himself, to give to any righteous man who would be willing to call it daughter. The next morning he found 52 notes fanned like a peacock's plumage under the upright synagogue's front door. From the maker of copper wire knickknacks, Peashel S., who had lost a wife of only 2 months in the pogrom of torn garments. If not for the girl, then for me. I am a righteous person, and there are things that I deserve. From the lonely candle dipper, Mordecai C., whose hands were encased in gloves of wax that could never be washed off. I am so alone in my workshop all day, there will be no candle dippers after me. Doesn't it make kind of sense? From the unemployed sloucher Lumpel W., who reclined on Passover, not because it was a religious custom, but because why should that night be different from all others? I'm not the greatest person that ever lived, but I would be a good father, and you know it. From the deceased philosopher Pinchas T., who was struck on the head by a falling beam at the flour mill, put her back into the water and let her be with me. The well-regarded rabbi was exceedingly knowledgeable about the large, extra-large, and extra-extra-large matters of the Jewish faith, and was able to draw upon the most obscure and indecipherable texts to reason seemingly impossible religious quandaries, but he knew hardly anything about life itself, and for this reason, because the baby's birth had no textual precedence, he couldn't ask for anyone's advice, because how would it look for the very source of all advice to be an advice seeker? Because the baby was about life, and was about life, and was life. He found himself to be quite stuck. They're all decent men, he thought, all a little below average perhaps, but tolerable at heart. Who is least undeserving? The best decision is no decision, he decided, and put the letters in her crib, vowing to give my great-great-great-great-grandmother, and in certain sense me, to the author of the first note she grabbed for. But she didn't grab for any of them. She paid them no notice at all. For 2 days she didn't move a muscle, never crying or opening her mouth for food. The black-hatted men continued to holler prayers from their pulleys. Holy, holy, holy. Continued to sway above the transplanted broad, continued to hold more tightly to the great book than the rope, praying that someone was listening to their prayers, until in the middle of one early late evening service, the good G5 fishmonger, Bitzel R., hollered what every man in the congregation had to be thinking. The smell is intolerable. How can I act so close to God when I feel so close to the shitter? The well-regarded rabbi, who didn't disagree, put a halt to the prayers. He lowered himself to the glass floor and opened the ark. A most terrible stench poured forth, an all-encompassing, impossible to overlook, inhuman and inexcusable stink of supreme repugnance. It flooded from the ark, swept through the synagogue, streamed on every street, every alleyway of the shtetl, billowed under every pillow in every bedroom, entering the nostrils of the sleeping for long enough to misdirect their dreams before exiting with the next snore, and drained finally into the broad. The baby was perfectly silent and unmoving. The well-regarded rabbi placed the crib on the floor, removed a single sopping slip of paper, and hollered, "It appears that the baby has chosen Yonkel as her father. We were to be in good hands."